There is a plant that heals broken bones. Medieval physicians called it knit bone because fractures mended faster when wrapped in its leaves. It grows back 7 times a year. Cut it down, and it returns within weeks, producing more food than most annual vegetables combined. For 2,000 years, it fed livestock, healed wounds, and fertilized gardens without a single bag of chemicals. Then in 2001, the FDA banned it, not because it stopped working, because it worked too well. A plant that heals without prescriptions, feeds without seed purchases, and grows forever without permission is dangerous to industries built on dependency. This is the story of the herb that empires trusted, that science validated, and that regulators erased from your table. Welcome to Traditional Harvest. Before we open this vault, if these stories matter to you, the best way to preserve this wisdom is simple. Subscribe, hit the bell, and share these vaults with those who need to remember what we forgot. The archive opens in ancient Greece around 400 BCE. A physician named Dioscorides documents a plant the soldiers call symphytum, from the Greek word meaning to unite. Roman legions carry it across Europe. When bones shatter in battle, field medics pack the wounds with mashed leaves. The bones knit faster. The name sticks. Knit bone, comfrey, Symphytum officinale. The plant is unmistakable. Broad, hairy leaves the size of dinner plates. Purple and white bell-shaped flowers that droop like tiny lanterns. A taproot that plunges 10 feet into the earth, mining minerals that shallow-rooted crops cannot reach. That root is the secret. Comfrey is a dynamic accumulator. It pulls nitrogen, potassium, calcium, and phosphorus from deep underground and stores them in its leaves. When those leaves decompose, they release nutrients into the topsoil. One comfrey plant improves every plant around it. Medieval monasteries understood this. They grew comfrey in healing gardens alongside feverfew and yarrow. The leaves were crushed into poultices for sprains, burns, and fractures. The roots were boiled into teas for stomach ulcers and lung ailments. Hildegard of Bingen, the 12th century abbess and herbalist, prescribed comfrey for internal bleeding. Nicholas Culpeper, the 17th century physician, wrote that comfrey was so powerful in healing wounds that pieces of flesh boiled with the root would join together again. But comfrey was not only medicine, it was food. The young leaves were eaten like spinach across Europe and Russia. They contain 35% protein when dried, more than soybeans. They provide calcium at levels rivaling dairy, iron exceeding spinach, and vitamin B12, one of the only plant sources known. Farmers fed comfrey to pigs, cattle, and chickens. The animals grew faster. Milk production increased. Eggs had darker yolks. The yield was staggering. A single comfrey plant can be harvested 4 to 7 times per growing season. One study found that an acre of comfrey produces 120 tons of green matter annually. Compare that to alfalfa at 8 tons. Comfrey outproduces the king of forage crops by 15 times. And unlike alfalfa, comfrey is perennial. Plant it once and harvest for 20 years. No tilling, no replanting, no seed purchases. In Russia, comfrey became a strategic crop. Soviet agronomists in the 1950s developed Baching 14, a sterile hybrid that produces no viable seed. It cannot spread uncontrollably. It cannot become invasive. You propagate it only by root cuttings, which means farmers control exactly where it grows. Baching 14 was engineered for maximum leaf production and minimum alkaloid content. The Soviets understood something Western agriculture refused to admit: a perennial crop that feeds livestock, heals soil, and requires no inputs is revolutionary. By the 1960s, comfrey had spread to organic farms across Britain and America. Lawrence Hills, the founder of the Henry Doubleday Research Association, championed it as the future of sustainable agriculture. He called comfrey the most useful plant in the garden. His research showed that comfrey tea, made by fermenting leaves and water, produced a fertilizer rivaling commercial products. Tomatoes grown with comfrey tea yielded more fruit. Potatoes grew larger. Gardens thrived without a single synthetic chemical. Permaculture adopted comfrey as a foundational species, planted around fruit trees, and the roots break compacted soil while leaves become mulch. Chop and drop. The nutrients cycled endlessly. Bill Mollison, the father of permaculture, included comfrey in nearly every design. A plant that feeds, heals, and fertilizes without external inputs is exactly what resilient systems require. Then the attack began. In the 1980s, studies emerged from Australia and New Zealand. Researchers fed laboratory rats diets containing 33% comfrey leaves for extended periods. The rats developed liver damage. The compound responsible was identified as pyrrolizidine alkaloids, naturally occurring chemicals found in over 6,000 plant species worldwide. The headlines were immediate. Comfrey causes cancer, comfrey destroys livers. The FDA took notice. What the headlines did not mention was context. The rats consumed comfrey at levels no human would ever approach. Eating 33% of your diet as comfrey leaves for months is not comparable to drinking occasional comfrey tea or eating young leaves as a vegetable. Dose makes the poison. Caffeine kills at high concentrations, so does water. But the damage was done. In 2001, the FDA issued a warning. Companies selling comfrey supplements were ordered to stop. Internal use was effectively banned. The plant that had healed wounds for 2,000 years, that fed livestock across continents, that fertilized gardens without chemicals, was declared unsafe. You could still grow it. You could still use it externally. But you could not sell it as food or medicine. The knowledge was being erased. The timing was not coincidental. In the late 1990s, the herbal supplement industry grew explosively. Billions of dollars flowed to products outside pharmaceutical control. Comfrey threatened multiple industries simultaneously. If a plant heals wounds, who needs antibiotic ointments? If a plant fertilizes soil, who needs synthetic nitrogen? If a plant feeds livestock better than commercial feed, who needs the feed companies? Germany took a different approach. Rather than banning comfrey, German regulators approved external preparations while restricting internal use to short durations. They recognized what American regulators ignored. A plant used safely for millennia deserved nuanced evaluation, not blanket prohibition. But America chose prohibition. The science since 2001 has only complicated the narrative. Studies show that pyrrolizidine alkaloid content varies dramatically between comfrey varieties. Bocking 14, the variety developed by Soviet agronomists, contains significantly lower alkaloid levels than wild comfrey. Young leaves contain less than mature leaves. Roots contain more than leaves. The blanket ban made no distinctions. All comfrey was treated as equally dangerous. Meanwhile, the pharmaceutical industry sells drugs with documented liver toxicity. Acetaminophen causes over 50,000 emergency room visits each year in America from liver damage. It remains on every store shelf. Statins, prescribed to millions, carry liver warning labels. They remain bestsellers. The standard is not safety. The standard is control. Here is what comfrey still offers. The leaves contain allantoin, a compound that stimulates cell proliferation. Modern wound dressings incorporate synthetic allantoin because the science is undeniable. Comfrey accelerates healing. The rosmarinic acid in comfrey reduces inflammation. The mucilage soothes damaged tissue. External use remains legal and the evidence supporting it remains robust. For soil, comfrey is irreplaceable. The deep taproot mines subsoil nutrients that would otherwise remain locked away. The leaves decompose rapidly, releasing those nutrients for shallow-rooted vegetables. Comfrey mulch suppresses weeds, retains moisture, and feeds earthworms. One plant improves an entire garden bed. For livestock, comfrey provides nutrition that commercial feeds cannot match. The protein content exceeds alfalfa. The mineral density exceeds most forage crops. Farmers who still grow comfrey report healthier animals, better milk production, and reduced veterinary bills. The knowledge survives in small farms where profit margins demand self-sufficiency. The pattern is familiar. Crops that enable independence are systematically suppressed. Comfrey cannot be patented. It propagates from root cuttings that anyone can share. It requires no fertilizer because it makes its own. It requires no pesticides because few pests bother it. It requires no irrigation because that 10-foot taproot finds water others cannot reach. A plant this independent cannot generate recurring revenue. Industrial agriculture requires dependency. Seeds must be purchased annually. Fertilizers must be applied every season. Pesticides must be sprayed on schedule. Veterinary products must treat problems that better nutrition would prevent. Comfrey breaks every link in that chain, so comfrey had to be marginalized. They could not make it illegal to grow. That would be too obvious. Instead, they made it illegal to sell as food. They made it dangerous in the public mind. They ensured that a generation would grow up never knowing that their great-grandparents ate comfrey leaves and healed wounds with comfrey poultices. The erasure was not physical, it was cultural. But comfrey cannot be killed. Cut it down and it regrows from root fragments. Plow it under and pieces survive to sprout again. It has been called invasive for the same reason sunchokes and chufa are called invasive. It succeeds without permission. It does not need us. Climate change is accelerating. Droughts are intensifying. Fertilizer prices have tripled in recent years. The industrial system that banned comfrey is showing cracks. When synthetic nitrogen becomes unaffordable, gardeners will rediscover plants that make their own. When commercial feed prices spike, farmers will remember crops that grow without inputs. When soil degradation reaches crisis levels, the deep-rooted perennial will be waiting. Comfrey asks only to be planted once. It returns year after year, producing biomass that feeds soil, livestock, and humans. It heals wounds that modern medicine charges hundreds to treat. It fertilizes gardens that would otherwise require bags of chemicals. It mines minerals from depths that annual crops cannot reach. They banned it because it could not be controlled. They demonized it because it could not be patented. They erased it from public knowledge because informed people make dangerous consumers. But the plant remains. In permaculture gardens across the world, comfrey thrives. In small farms that reject industrial dependency, comfrey feeds animals and enriches soil. In the knowledge passed between gardeners, comfrey survives. We did not lose comfrey. We were told to forget it, but forgetting is not final. Every root cutting shared between neighbors preserves what they tried to erase. Every gardener who discovers that comfrey tea grows better tomatoes than store-bought fertilizer learns what corporate agriculture fears. Every wound healed with a comfrey poultice proves that abundance was never lost, it was just buried. And buried things grow. If this vault opens something for you, subscribe to Traditional Harvest and hit the bell. Every like and every share preserves what they tried to erase. The next vault opens soon.